because I recorded the whole thing and nothing all at the same time. So.
Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How are you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am finally coming back to you with my review in my palette Roulette series of the Mikayla X Glamlite palette. I have been utilizing this palette for a good 6 weeks, I think it's been, since I pulled this into my collection. I pulled it pre-move, knowing that I was going to be utilizing just one palette and one palette alone until I got done with my move. So I did pull this in because of the variety that was within this palette, and we'll go over that here very shortly. But I'm so excited to be filming today. I'm so excited to finally be in my new space. Like, I have missed filming. It's been a little minute, so I'm going to give you the same preface that I gave to the last video. If it seems like I'm new at this, it's because I kind of feel new at this. It's been 6 weeks. And it's funny, it's not like riding a bicycle. You don't like automatically remember what exactly to do. I.e. my audio. I just remembered my audio. So some things never change. That's probably never going to change. With that said, for those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high-end, colorful beauty and self-care. I also work in the beauty industry as a field leader for Ulta Beauty. You get a lot of education in my position. I like to bring that education to you on this channel, but ultimately I'm just out here talking about makeup because I love to talk about makeup, and I'm assuming that you also like talking about makeup, or you probably wouldn't be here. So I hope that you'll want to talk about makeup with me. Don't forget to hit me up down in the comment section. And with that said, let's roll into this video where I am reviewing the Glamlite X Mikayla palette. I'm going to start by saying that my new space, as beautiful as it is and as happy as I am to be here, is quite a bit different than my old space. Number one, 3 of my walls in my old space had windows, so I could use a lot more natural light than I am able to use in this location. While I do have a window in this room, it is one window. It is a rather large window, but the sun beats straight into it, and it's so hot, and it overexposes everything around me, so it doesn't quite work. At least with the regular lights that I have, my ring light, my umbrella lights, my box lights, I'm able to control some of the lighting, so I am using those. With that said, because of that, it still gets really, really hot in this room. A lot more hot than I realized it got in my old room. So I have broken out my handy dandy fan, and if you see multiple jump cuts in this, it is because I am fanning myself. I wish I knew whether this was going to like greatly impact the sound on my videos or no at this point in time. I did test it in the last video that I recorded, but I haven't edited that yet, so I don't know. Because if it doesn't greatly impact, I will be using it throughout the entirety of the video. Also, in terms of audio, I don't really know how this room is impacting the audio yet. I promise you it's a work in progress, and we will get back upright in terms of sound and how the videos are flowing, etc., etc. If I look nice and shiny, it is because I am nice and shiny. I am sweating my bum off in this room, but I am so excited to be here. So with all that out of the way, let's start with, I am reviewing the upside down Mikayla X Glamlite palette today, and I have been utilizing this palette for about 6 weeks. This palette is $42 on the Glamlite website. That is the only place that you can pick it up, and it does have 1.26 ounces of product in it, or 0.042 ounces per pan, and there are 30 shades in this pan. The front of the palette looks like this, and it is full of glitter behind this see-through, like plexiglass, almost like shadow box kind of situation. And I think that that really drew attention from a lot of people who maybe weren't familiar with Mikayla to this palette. I am one of those people. This was first launched with Mikayla in 2021, which was just roughly a year after she started in social media, which I find is wild. That is crazy fast. And I mean, like, who wouldn't be proud of her, right? The front of the palette does look like this. It just says Glamlite and Mikayla. And Mikayla is on top of the, like, plexi piece here in kind of like this glittery, like, writing, and is tactile, so you can feel the ridges in it. And then the back of it looks like this. It says Mikayla. It gives you a hashtag to, like, tag all of your photos that come from this palette too, so that you can, you know, pop up on Mikayla's feed, but also Glamlite's feed and whatnot. And then it has the information about the shadows in this palette. It does have eyeshadows and pressed pigments in this palette, and I believe that is what makes it cruelty-free and vegan. Pressed pigments, for those of you unaware, most of them are labeled pressed pigments because they do not include natural ingredients like crushed up bugs to make the pigments in the shadow, but instead include dyes. Dyes, according to the FDA, are not safe for eye use. It doesn't say that anywhere on the palette, but what it does say is caution for external use only. Discontinue if redness, rash, or itching occurs. This is common from dyes in pressed pigment shadows, which is why they are not eye safe. Cruelty-free and vegan brands will use pressed pigments versus carmine because carmine is crushed up bugs. There's that. I have never had a problem with pressed pigments. I have super sensitive eyes. That does not mean that you won't have a problem with it. This isn't to say that they're not eye safe in other countries. This is just to say the FDA in the United States deems them not eye safe because they're pressed pigments full of dyes instead of natural ingredients. With that said, there are only 12 eye safe shadows in this palette. So another reason why I believe it is not an eye safe palette is because it's not labeled as an eyeshadow palette, it's labeled as a color palette. That's also another telltale sign that they include not eye safe ingredients. Not to go off on a tangent on this, because I will use them on my eyes regardless, because I've never had a problem, but just so you buyer beware, right? The inside of the palette does have a really nice mirror that you can see all of the horrible things that are going on in my space. And then the palette looks like this. You can see it has a variety of tones in it, which makes it a really great palette to have the only palette in use for 6 weeks, which is why I pulled it in for my palette roulette going into my move. Tons of variety due to the fact that there are, 2 rows of neutral-esque tones and 3 rows of really bright shadows, and I mean even quasi not so bright shadows that could really be utilized in an everyday eye look as well. I loved using this palette over the last 6 weeks because I knew that no matter what, I didn't have to have the same eye look over and over again. It wasn't just 10 pans of eyeshadow. I didn't get bored. That much I can say, and it was my one and only eyeshadow palette, besides this one, which I rarely use if I'm 100% honest. This does have a 5-star rating on Glamlite, but number one, I don't often trust those 5-star reviews on the brand's specific website. But number two, that 5 stars is coming from 21 reviews, and many of those 21 reviews stated very specifically in them that it wasn't a 5-star review because they love the palette. It was a 5-star review because they love Mikayla, and they don't even have the palette. So do not trust that 5-star review. I would probably give it a good 4.4, 4.6 stars. Definitely not a 5-star palette in my humble opinion. I love Glamlite, so I'm just going to start with that. I love Glamlite as a whole. I have plenty of Glamlite palettes that I enjoy that I will probably never let go of. The only Glamlite palette that I've had in my collection that I did declutter was the Glamlite Glam Donut palette. I think the pink and purple and blue one, because they just weren't, it was all shimmers, and it was all shimmers that I had in other Glamlite palettes, and I didn't need that one. I gave it to my daughter. She wanted it so bad, so I just gave it to her. I love Glamlite for me, but I wouldn't call this a 5-star palette. With that said, the mattes in this are definitely good, and they are definitely not difficult to blend, but what I will say about them is that I do feel like they overblend, meaning that the pigmentation that you see once you pack it onto your eye is not there once you start blending it out. The pigmentation does change or shift quite a bit, actually, as you blend the shadows out. One of the worst ones, I think, is probably the blue, which looks like incredibly deep and dark and bold, and when you put it onto your eye and start to blend it out, it's almost like it shifts to like a baby blue on blend. This isn't unheard of. A lot of really like bold eyeshadows that are of this nature in other palettes do the same thing. So that's, again, not a make or break. But what I find most difficult about these shadows is as pigmented as they are, as easily blendable as they are, and as smooth as they are, they do not want to build on themselves without voiding or causing patchiness or even kind of muddying in to the shadows underneath, even if they are not a shadow that should cause any kind of muddiness to occur. My biggest problem is the voiding that occurs. If you build on top of another shadow, you can only build so much before the shadow that you're trying to build with just totally erases all the color underneath, so that you're left with this like blank voided area of your eye look. This eye look that I put together today took me 2 hours to accomplish, and it took me 2 hours to accomplish because I am using what I would deem the 3 worst shades in the palette, which is this one and these 2 in my eye look, and they did not want to get along with each other. I did pull it out, but I ended up mixing these 2 together and just barely patting them into the outer V of my eye look and not blending them at all, not even into the crease, because it just wasn't working. It just wasn't, and it was, frankly, it was pissing me off. The shimmers in this palette are the standouts. They're the most stunning, most smooth, most opaque shimmers that I have ever worked with in terms of Glamlite. I do see that there is a slight difference in these shimmers versus other Glamlite shimmers, in that they're not quite as dry as other Glamlite shimmers. These ones almost feel wet, kind of a lot creamy, almost like a Super Shock, but maybe even a little bit more moist than a Super Shock shadow feels. And you can tell when you use these shimmers, because almost immediately there is quite a bit of a dip in the shadow, even though you maybe have only used it once or twice. I would say that these are probably shimmers that won't take long at all to pan because of how pliable they are. Even dipping your finger into them, like you can get clear down to the pan if you need to with one of these shimmers. Not that you'll ever need to. I think when I think of these shimmers and what they remind me of is there was 2 shadows in the Paint Pro and Paint palette from Glamlite that I remember hating because they were too creamy and too wet, in my humble opinion. These ones are kind of like the mix between the 2 in terms of creaminess. So these are not quite as creamy as those ones in the Paint and the Paint Pro, but there were only 2 in those palettes, 1 in each palette, that these remind me of. Only those were lots more creamy and didn't really play well. These ones definitely play well and stick around far longer than those ones do. And I think it's because they're a little bit more dense, a lot less creamy than those, but still creamy. Does that make any sense? Like, am I making any sense? I do love that the opacity of them. I think that I did several one and done eyeshadow looks with these shimmers in this palette because you can pack it onto your eyelid and then blend it out. They blend it out so much better than the mattes in the palette did, which is very strange. And like I said, I really do firmly feel that the shimmers in this palette are where it's at for this palette. And that's sad because 17 of the eyeshadows in this palette are mattes and only 13 are shimmers. So if you're looking at this palette for the mattes, I would say skip it. You could definitely get better mattes than what's in this palette, and that includes other mattes within the Glamlite realm, but the shimmers are bomb. The shimmers are amazing. I think I said so, but there are only 12 shadows in this that are eye safe. The rest are pressed pigments, which would not, per FDA standards, be eye safe shadows. These are definitely best with a primer for not only longevity, but also ease of use. I would say wear time with these with the primer is somewhere around the 10 or 11 hours before they start significantly fading and moving around on your eye, and somewhere around the 6 or 7 hour mark before significant fading without a primer. My eyes typically do well with or without a primer. My eyes aren't super oily and they're hooded, but they're not super hooded. So my eyeshadows don't typically move around a whole lot. So when an eyeshadow does move around when I'm not wearing primer, I know that primer is of the essence with these. And that is what I found to be true with these shimmers. With the mattes, I find that they sheer out, or they definitely fade rather quickly, honestly, for the opacity of the shadows. And I think that a lot of that has to do with, again, the troubles that I saw when blending these shadows. Like, they really just don't have the in-depth opacity to them. They're just straight up front opacity. Then as you start to blend, that opacity goes away. I feel like that's why they fade as quickly as they do. The shimmers, of course, will stay better with glitter glue, or if you are wetting your brush. I haven't had glitter glue in my inventory since before I moved because I used the last of my glitter glue like in May, I think it was, and just haven't replaced it because it's not one of those products in my collection that I deem a necessity. I do want to replace it eventually, but I really didn't have a problem with these shimmers sticking to my lid, just wetting the brush. They do appear better on your eyes if you use your finger though, or a really dense brush. When you use a powder brush, they don't really show up really well, but I will tell you I used a little fluffier dense brush to blend out the edges when I did my one and done eyeshadow look, and I found that that worked perfectly for these. You don't really need a glitter glue for them to appear on your eyes in the way that you want them to appear on your eyes. There is a good amount of fallout from this palette, and you will see some staining. They are pressed pigments, so you're going to see some staining, of course. The mattes have a lot more kick up in the pan than the shimmers do. The shimmers fall out quite a bit more than the mattes do. So fallout isn't necessarily a make or break for me, but I do know it is for a lot of people. So I like to bring that to attention when I'm doing these reviews so that you know whether it's deserving of your money or no. I typically will not show a whole, 30 pan eyeshadow palette worth of swatches when I do these larger palettes, but I will show you some of my favorite shades. I will also show you the ones that I didn't think worked out so hot, and I will try and find some swatches online, maybe from the Glamlite website, to post in here so that you guys can see that. What I will say is they don't all swatch super great. You will find that with pressed pigments, but swatches should not make or break your decision on whether an eyeshadow is going to work for you or not, because swatches are just one element of the game. They typically will perform very, very different on your face when you're using brushes and not just finger swatches. With that said, I'm going to ready myself for the swatches, but I also like to talk a little bit about the brand or the collaborator when we do these kind of videos. Like the first time in the brand, I'll talk about the brand. The first time with said collaborator, I'll talk about the collaborator. This isn't the first time that I have reviewed a Glamlite palette, so I've talked about Glamlite in the past. I haven't talked about Mikayla, and I have to be honest, this is a collaboration with Mikayla Noguera, I think is how you say her last name, and I am not super familiar with Mikayla. The only reasons why I'm familiar with Mikayla is because of the controversies that she's been the face of, and I'll talk about that in a minute. What I do know about Mikayla is that she rose very, very quickly. She started posting to, I think, TikTok initially, and is still a TikTok content creator, and Instagram in 2020 during the peak of, COVID, when everybody was just trying to figure out something to do, and TikTok was really new to us, right? She rose very, very quickly. Again, this palette came into existence a year after she had really been on any kind of social media platform. She has since done another collab with Glamlite. She does all kinds of stuff. She is an amazing influencer in terms of makeup artistry. Like, there's just so much about Mikayla that is good. And I think that once an influencer gets to a certain point in their influence career, they become a target. And I remember a couple years ago hearing some hubbub about like how her accent was not real, or how her voice was super deep, and people were questioning, her about that. And her most recent controversy, and the biggest reason why I know anything about Mikayla, is for her L'Oreal, I think, telescopic mascara review that she just did recently. It was all over YouTube about how she was doing a sponsored post on TikTok. Didn't really, number one, necessarily disclose that it was a post for a brand, which she is known for doing, and then was showcasing this mascara, popped off to do the other eye, popped back on, and was showcasing the one eye versus the other, with mascara, without mascara. I don't know 100%, but what I do know is there's all kinds of flack out there about how she was posting this mascara review with false lashes. Like, why? Number one. But number two, like, I guess a girl's got to make the money a girl's got to make. So, she's doing it the best that she can. Unfortunately, undisclosed sponsorships and lying to your fan base isn't really the way to go about it. But she's got such a giant following. She reminds me a lot of Jaclyn Hill, and how she has such a huge following and is making so many mistakes, but her following loves her so much that they just continue to forgive and forget. And then there's people like me who just don't know anything about it. I'm not here for the drama. I'm really not. I know that sometimes the drama is what keeps people from, supporting certain brands or certain people. So, and I am not here to review the person, but that is something that comes into play for many of the people that watch my videos when they decide where they're going to spend their money. That said, the brand actually has a really fantastic background, and I'll link the video that I talked about that up in the cards for you. I think that the packaging is something that really brought people that had no idea who Mikayla was to the Mikayla palette, and to focus in on who Mikayla is, because the packaging is, really cool and fun. And I am one of those people that was interested in this palette for the packaging, not for the person, because I had no idea who Mikayla was. And as a matter of fact, these palettes, I got this one and Pot 2, which is her second collab with Glamlite, recently, like within the last several months, because I purchased them when I purchased the Glamlite X Chucky collab, because I really wanted the Chucky collab, and purchasing these together. I got a bundle deal, which was phenomenal. I think I got both palettes for like 32 bucks, which is more than what one costs. And it got me free shipping. So I didn't buy them for the Mikayla reason. I bought them because they were pretty. The other one, pot 2, is a largely green palette. Green's my favorite color. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I purchase these palettes, but none of them are because of Mikayla. I don't not like her, but I just don't know anything about her. With that said, I'm gonna swatch some of my favorites for you. Some of my favorites are going to be this one, which is called Glow Up, and this one, which is called Manifest. This one, which is called Simping. This one, called Nas. I think it's for NARS. And then this one, called Stunnin'. So we have Glow Up, really beautiful, like almost duochrome, peachy, orangey pink. Then we have Manifest, which is a really beautiful, like silvery lavender metallic. Then we have Simping, which is a really beautiful Barbie pink metallic, really, really pretty metallic. Then we have Nas, which is a really pretty, I would say kind of like, I don't know, it sounds really weird to say it, but it's like a, like orbity, it reminds me of like a spaceship silver, because it's got a little bit of like lavender to it. It's not quite lavender, but it's not quite silver. I don't know how to explain this shadow, but it is beautiful and one of my favorites. I used it as often as I could. Then we have Stunnin', which is chartreuse, beautiful chartreuse metallic. The neighbor is walking right outside my window. Then I have Audrey, which of the metallics is the last of my favorite metallics. I mean, there's not very many shadows in here that are metallic. And I'm showing you 6 of the 13, but these are my favorites, and this one is in my eye look today. I think that you can see just how creamy they are in the swatches. They truly are beautiful and not super chunky. They're just really, really pretty. They're just so pretty and very, very opaque, which is really great for even the like lightest of the tones, like even that Glow Up one, that first like kind of like almost duochrome peachy pink. So pigmented and beautiful on an eye look. There is quite a bit of glitter left over on your hand. I don't think that you can see that, but some of the mattes, even though I wasn't like super impressed with the mattes, this one here really surprised me. This is called Willow, and the reason why it surprised me is because it looks like it should be a really deep dark brown, but when you put it on your eye look, it's actually kind of an eggplanty purple. It's so pretty, and this is the deepest shadow in this palette, so I did use it quite a bit. I have to be honest, it did aggravate me that it wasn't a brown at times, specifically when I was trying to partner it with some of these like neutral colors. It really aggravated me that it wasn't a brown at times. I mean, it's still a really beautiful color. And then additionally, I really love this shade here. It is called Simba. It's a really beautiful like peachy pink color for transition. I really also kind of love this color here, which is in my eye look today. It's what's blended up towards the eyebrow, and it is called The Best Color. I would not have agreed that mint green is the best color, but this is Simba, and this is The Best Color. And I mean, the pigmentation on that mint is fantastic. Probably the best pigment on a mint green I've seen in a very, very, very long time. And then I'm not going to swatch really any more of the mattes except for these 3, which I told you earlier were the worst ones in the palette because I want you to see they are super pigmented, but as you blend them out, they just blend away. They just blend away. I don't even know what to say. All three of these colors are in my eye look today, but again, it took me 2 hours to get this eye look because of the frustration. I would say that this is definitely not a palette for beginners. The amount of finesse and frustration that you're going to feel by simply trying to do a basic eye look from this is probably well beyond what a new to makeup person should ever have to experience with a palette. I hesitate to say I would recommend it for those reasons, but if the color story calls to you, you're familiar with Glamlite or like say Melt even, because Melt has palettes that I would never suggest to a new to makeup person just because of the finesse that has to happen with their eyeshadow palettes. If you're familiar with how to work an eyeshadow that is hard to work with to your advantage, yeah, I would absolutely say go after this palette. But if you're new to makeup, you've never dealt with difficult shadows before, you've never had to finesse anything before, this is probably not the palette for you. I would also say right now it is sold out on the Glamlite website. I don't know if it's coming back. Last I knew it was on sale for $30. And then when I looked at it today to pull up information for you on its weight, I think I was looking for weight, it did say it was sold out. So with that said, it's a great palette in my humble opinion for the shimmers. Not such a great palette for the mattes, but I'm going to keep it anyways because I do love it, and I do love the eye looks that I got out of it, and I love in and of itself the versatility of this palette and the fact that I didn't get bored even though it was the only palette that I had been working with for the last at least 5 weeks. So I'm going to go pick another palette. I'll be right back. I have so many palettes in my newness drawer, palettes that I pull from when I do these palette roulette videos because I know I haven't used them. And a lot of them have been in my collection for quite some time, but also of those that have been in my collection for quite some time that are new, a lot of them were given to me in gratis or in a FabFitFun or something, not ones that I picked myself, right? I do have one from Blend Bunny that I picked myself and one from Glamlite, the other Mikayla palette that I picked myself, but I always go back to, or always end up picking the ones that I paid for myself, and I think it just comes down to what am I most excited to use. Today, what I'm most excited to use for the next few weeks are my brand new Melt palettes that I brought in right before I moved. So I have the Melt Millennial Pinks palette that isn't a new palette, but is new to me, and I am so excited to use this. It's got blues and pinks and grays in it, and it just feels like it's a really great, like, you know, summertime palette, in my humble opinion. And my friend Grace has it and loves it. And then I also have the new Electrip palette by Milk Cosmetics that reminds me of a fun drug-induced party, which I wouldn't know about because I don't do drugs and I don't really party and never really have, but the outside of it reminds me of a drug-induced party, but the inside of it is just very plain, not plain Jane, but plain normal for me. I mean, you would think I got this eye look out of this palette today. So with that said, these are the two palettes that I'm going to be utilizing over the next coming weeks. And then I will come back to you in a couple weeks and we'll discuss my thoughts and opinions on these palettes. Please stay tuned for that if you're interested. I would be delighted to have you press that subscribe button and be part of my YouTube fam. I've got a lot of content coming your way. I do realize and recognize that I have been off the platform for a while because I needed to be, because I was moving, and that might have screwed around with like my content and people seeing my content. But I'm here to tell you, I'm here 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday under normal circumstances. And I really enjoy this. I'm not here for the money. I'm not here for, yes, there's ads now, but I did this for a good 5 years before I ever got monetized. So I'm really happy to be monetized right now, but I'm telling you, it's nothing. it really is nothing. Please, if you are so inclined, please subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you here. I hope that you and yours are doing well. I hope that you are all healthy and safe and getting along as best you can, and that you are enjoying summer so far wherever it is that you are, or winter, whichever it happens to be where you are. I hope that you're loving each other from afar, and until next time, bye friends.